Welcome to another edition of 805 Sports Talk. And although it is spring break, there's no break for us here on the show, and we're going to get right into it. We're going to talk about the upcoming title chases. It is about the midway point for the LPL baseball and softball seasons, Pac-8 baseball and softball. So we're going to kind of unpack all that stuff and see who are some of the front runners, who are some of the contenders. Lorenzo, I'll start with you. What's kind of been the biggest surprise for you so far in the prep spring sports season? What's kind of jumped out to you?
Well, obviously I cover a lot of Los Padres League stuff. I'm surprised by how good Lompoc's been right away. I mean, it's very hard to transition from the Jim Allen there, especially with the number of years he's put in there. But, you know, Brian Aguilar, let's keep in mind, he is a former Lompoc guy, former Lompoc player, and he's a young guy as well. I mean, he could relate well to his players, but, you know, they've been off to a really, really fast start, and they've had a bevy of hitters on board. And I mean, I've been really impressed with just how fast they've been able to put things together right away. Santa Maria, on the other hand, I'm very surprised by how this team's been struggling. I mean, granted, yeah, they did kind of get hit a little bit with graduation, but you still bring back your top ace. But in the times I've seen Santa Maria play, it's just like they just look inept. That's probably the best word I could describe it. I mean, I don't see very much consistency out of the offensive end. Outside of Garcia on the mound, I mean, it doesn't seem like they have a lot of depth this year. So I have to wonder how much that's going to haunt them down the road, or if they can still manage to still somewhat sneak into a late playoff spot.
All right, Kenny, moving to you, what's kind of jumped out to you so far this spring season?
I feel the same way as Lorenzo. I figured Lompoc, frankly, would be a playoff team, but I figured a solid third place playoff team behind Templeton, Santa Ynez, not necessarily in that order. Santa Ynez is making a run at it, but I didn't think they'd be this good, to be honest. Brian Aguilar, I think, is just a solid baseball man. I think that has something to do with it, and I think his guys are good and coachable, and they've bought in. And that I haven't seen Lompoc in person. That's the best way I can figure. And you know, on the other hand, Santa Maria, I've been thinking about it. Their struggles might be a little less surprising than at first glance, because losing Paulie Navarro to graduation, I think, hurt them a lot more than I thought it would, because he was, Joe, you know this, he was this dependable number two man in the rotations you can ask for. And he was probably at least as mentally dialed in as any player they had. Marcos Rodriguez, I guess he was commonly called Boogie, was another dependable guy. He was a spot starter, but he did well whenever he was in there on the mound usually. And not the biggest hitter, but a dependable glove. Another guy who was mentally dialed in. Frankly, I don't think they have enough guys at this point who are mentally dialed in. Plus they are banged up. But frankly, there doesn't seem to be any leadership. I mean, I see catchers all the time yelling "one" as go to first base. I mean, I don't hear anybody telling the runners to get back to the bag when they should, what base they should throw to on a ground ball. They're up against it as it is. They have a thin roster and they're banged up, but they need to give themselves more of a chance when they're in close games, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Santa Maria last year kind of surprised people, obviously, but this year the expectations are higher. And I think if they don't make the playoffs and at least make a run, even though they are in a tougher Division 5 this year, I think it's kind of a waste, because they do have a lot of talent. Mentioned Trevor Garcia. He's been a consistent player in the infield and has been their ace this year. You know, you don't want to waste talent like that. Slim Lopez, I think, is kind of the closest guy that they have this year to Paulie Navarro, kind of one of those glue guys. Slim has been solid. He seems dialed in, but I think there could be an uptick in focus. Maybe in the second half of league play that'll happen. I think one thing that could change is Isaiah Garcia is slated to return to action Wednesday today, so maybe that'll be a big boost for them. Maybe he can kind of, give them that spark. I'm guessing he'd be the leadoff guy for them, so that lineup could get deeper. It may take some time for Isaiah Garcia to kind of, work his way back up to, top speed and getting ready to play. He's been out since the football season with the ACL injury, so maybe that'll change things for them. But definitely 4-6 in LPL play is not going to cut it, and I think we are all expecting a lot more out of Santa Maria this year. And I think they were ranked in the top 3 in their division when the first polls came out this year, so I think some people had high expectations for them, and they haven't lived up to them quite yet. but hopefully things will change around, and I think that focus is a big part of it, is what you mentioned.
I don't know if you guys seen, but I've seen the second half of their schedule. They do have 2 games against Templeton and 2 games against Santa Ynez, but the rest is the bottom half of the league, and they're done with Lompoc. There is a chance that I think 4th place is doable. I think 11 and 10 is doable, maybe a little better, but they don't have the best odds as it is with the injuries. This group needs to get dialed in.
Yeah, and I think Coach Hebert said that when I was at the game on Tuesday or Monday, that he was looking at that schedule and does think they can kind of get in a rhythm once they start, playing some of those weaker teams in the LPL. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do kind of, have this second half surge. I don't know if it'll be enough to get into the postseason, but I definitely have higher expectations for them in the second half of league play. So moving on to Hancock softball, the Bulldogs are 16-8-1 on the season, 7-1 in conference. Bakersfield is a game in front at 9-1 in conference. Bailey Killo's sophomore, she's been great this year. Kenny, you've seen the Bulldogs. Do you think they're at where you kind of expected them to be so far? Do you expect them to come away with another conference title? How would you kind of judge what you've seen out of them so far?
Actually, as far as where I thought they would be, they're another one that has been a bit of a pleasant surprise. I don't know if surprise is the right word, but 7-1. I'm not sure in conference. I'm not sure. I thought they would be that good. Bailey Killo has really gotten it done all around on the mound and at the plate. Their defense has been good. Their hitting, they're not strong up and down the lineup, but I think that they seem to have enough decent hitting that can help carry them through. I would say they're actually a little ahead of where I thought they would be. They've done a nice job this year so far.
All right, and the Bulldogs host Ventura Thursday in a conference game, so that's a big one for them. Looking at LPL softball, I think Santa Ynez is kind of shaping up. They had a big week last week beating Santa Maria, and Orchid Academy, Armani Garcia struck out 10, I think, against Santa Maria, and then had a no-hitter against Orchid Academy last week, so that's big. I think Cabrillo is going to kind of, make a little surge there late. Lompoc is kind of shaped up pretty well. Lorenzo, you got any thoughts on LPL softball, especially in the Lompoc Valley? We know those teams have been some of the stronger teams in the LPL. Lompoc winning a CIF title, and Cabrillo's, kind of perennial LPL title contender. Do you think those two are going to kind of make a late season surge again?
I think softball in the LPL is kind of somewhat predictable because Cabrillo and Lompoc, they're usually neck and neck for the league title. Now you can include Santa Ynez. Santa Ynez, to me, Armani Garcia is already picking up where she's left off. I actually haven't seen a lot of Cabrillo because of the fact that a lot of their games were rained out. But Lompoc, the last time I saw the Braves play, they looked really, really stout on the offensive end, especially with players like Elizondo. You also had Kendall Martin as well. There's also a lot of experience back from this Braves team. And another thing to keep in mind, like baseball, they're also enduring a coaching transition as well, because there was that falling out with McKenna Martin last year. Then you had some JV coaches help with the program. Now you go back to Margie Ledgerwood, and the players have really responded to Margie's teachings and coaching. So, I'm expecting a three-team race toward the end.
We have a lot of prep softball later this week. Best of the West tournament at Hagerman. I think starts on Friday, wraps up on Saturday, and then a big Pac 8 league matchup is Tuesday with Righetti and St. Joseph playing. We haven't looked forward to a Righetti St. Joseph softball matchup in years, so I think that's actually an interesting one this year. We'll see if St. Joseph can kind of maybe shock Righetti. The Knights are 5-3-1, 2-2 in Pac 8 league play. Righetti's just 2-1 on the season, haven't gotten many games in, but they do play Dos Pueblos at home on Thursday, and then they will be playing in the Best of the West tournament. So Righetti will finally get some games in and then have a big league game next week against St. Joseph. So we're actually kind of looking forward to that one. We haven't looked forward to a matchup like that in a long time. So look out for that one. That's Tuesday, April 10th. This weekend, though, is the Arcadia Invite, and we got some interesting news with Joseph Domingues announcing he's going to compete there. I think he's been having a surprising season not with how well he's done, but some of his times are definitely impressive. What have you seen from Joseph Domingues so far this season? What do you expect out of him at Arcadia this weekend?
To be honest, I I didn't expect him to be running this fast this early. He's at 156 plus in the 800, low 420s, I believe, for the 1600. One hopes that this isn't a case where he'll peak early, but he is running quite well. I think Joseph wants a big time, maybe around 155 or maybe even under. I think he will give a good account of himself. He really hasn't had a poor outing. He's run fast when he's wanted to. He's just run to win, and so forth when he's wanted to. So I think he will give a good account of himself.
All right, and the Arcadia Invite is this weekend one of the biggest, probably the biggest, I think, track meet in California during the prep season. So look out for that. I think we'll have a number of local competitors over there. It's definitely probably the most prestigious one of the season. So we'll have some results from Joseph there, and good luck to him running over there. We talked about Brian Aguilar and the Lompoc High baseball team on the field, but they've had to deal with some things off the field recently. You wrote a good story about the theft that occurred with their baseball equipment and on their shed. How have they kind of dealt with that? Do you think it's going to impact their play on the field? And is there any updates on what's going on with that?
Well, I spoke with the Lompoc PD. They are trying to find some leads as to why somebody would take equipment from not only a shed, but equipment from kids, when you really think about it. But, everybody seems really upbeat. And here's the thing to keep in mind. Before getting that new equipment for Brian Aguilar, Lompoc didn't have a lot to work with. I mean, it was strictly gloves, bats. Didn't have a very snazzy pitching machine or anything else along that magnitude. And they made good use with what they had. Well, I feel like even with what's gone on, I mean, I still feel like that this is a very, very upbeat group of kids. I mean, they're not allowing this situation, this predicament to kind of dictate their season and allow things to unravel. And Brian Aguilar had told me that, he's been overwhelmed by the support, especially when you have an attorney down in Santa Barbara who makes a very generous donation to help with the aid of the program as well. But he's gotten a lot of phone calls from parents, from also parents of former players, just letting them know that, we're behind you, we support you guys, we hope that you're able to get your equipment back. And there's also that GoFundMe page that was put together by Lori Grossini, who's one of the moms to one of the current players on the Braves. So, the community support's been very, very great for Aguilar, and he recognized that right away.
Yeah, so you can find their GoFundMe on our websites, lompocrecord.com, santamariatimes.com. Seems like that there's been a ton of support for them. It seems like the baseball community has kind of rallied around them, and we hate to see that. Do you think they're kind of moving on from hoping to get that equipment back, or just they're going to use those funds to kind of replace equipment? Do you feel there's any chance to kind of locate that?
I think really the main reason why that GoFundMe page was set up was to be able to get a new pitching machine, get some new equipment, basically just compensate for what they already lost. Now, if they locate it, they locate it. It's just extra stuff. But, again, it goes back to the community support, that when something like this happens to the Braves, I mean, the surrounding community will pitch in and help. In fact, one of the people who actually donated to the Braves was Cole Osborne, one of the assistants of Cabrillo. Yeah,
Jonathan Osborne's son. So that's cool to see that, community camaraderie come together. So that's a fun story. I'm glad how you were able to cover that and kind of bring some light to the situation over there.
Sounds like they're just keeping on, and they've gotten a lot of support. But on the negative side, why would anyone want to steal a pitching machine?
Yeah. What are you going to use it for?
It just floors me.
Are you trying to be like Dude Perfect, that YouTube show, or what are you trying to use it for?
I don't know. We've had some questionable things like that. I know we've had a number of thefts with youth equipment. I know some of our little leagues have kind of dealt with that. Babe Ruth's, I think it was Orchid Youth Football had to deal with someone embezzling funds, so that was not fun. So we've kind of had those head-scratching news stories that deal with youth athletics. So this is just another one that we'll have to file away. Hopefully something good does come out of it. I think we've already kind of seen that with some of the support.
Hopefully this will be the last one of that
yes.
type.
Yeah.
Don't steal from kids, and especially youth.
Kids, the community will come out. So,
yes. Moving to Napomo, I was happy with the story you did on Mackenzie Bland. you had a chance to catch up with her last week at an LPL race, and you came away with some interesting insight with what she's kind of battled through. Can you kind of break her story down for us?
Yeah, interesting enough. She endures Raynaud's disease. And for anybody who's not familiar with Raynaud's, it affects your appendages, your wrists, your hands, your feet, to the point where you can go numb or your skin turns purple. And it's saying a lot because, I mean, we're used to seeing Mackenzie Bland run. And I mean, in a sport like, or events like the 400 and even the long jump, I mean, you're using your legs, you're using rapid hand movement. And it's amazing to see how Mackenzie can withstand this stuff, especially when it gets cold, because she actually told me that in cold elements, she can immediately see the purple on her skin. She can see the purple on her hands and on her feet. But she just lets it be known, it's like, this isn't going to prevent me from slowing me down. It's something that I just have to deal with.
Yeah, I was glad how you covered that, because we've heard of Mackenzie, we've seen her compete, and you don't know that she was kind of going through this thing over the last year or two, that she's kind of been battling this. So it goes to show that a lot of these guys battle through things that we don't know about.
She's a very, very vibrant young woman. And I mean, I could go back to last year when we did that story on Lauren Wade from Lompoc, the pitcher who, I mean, is battling something way worse. I mean, she's dealing with a lot of chronic seizures and multiple brain surgeries, but you know, you see Lauren Wade play, you see Mackenzie Bland on the track, you forget the fact that they have this virus that's supposed to set them back, but they choose not to be held back by that.
All right, moving to the national scene, everybody's kind of watching Monday night. Maybe they watched the first half. A lot of people probably didn't watch the whole game with Villanova taking on Michigan in the national title game. One of those crazy nights where pretty much an unheard of kid blows up Donte DiVincenzo, kind of got a lot of attention, MOP of the tournament, so that was fun. Not a really good game. I think Villanova kind of proved that it was the most dominant team in the nation, in the tournament, just ran through pretty much everybody. I think every victory for Villanova was by double digits, so congrats to them. Congrats to Donte DiVincenzo. Lorenzo, what did you kind of take away from the Final Four in a whole and the title game Monday night?
The Michael Jordan of Delaware. That's Donte DiVincenzo. And it's funny because I found out that he's from the same city that produced Henry Heimlich, the man behind the Heimlich maneuver.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a claim to fame from Wilmington, Delaware, but I'm a dummy for not choosing Villanova to come out of the tournament. I mean, I had Duke in one bracket, and I was dumb enough to also pick Virginia in another bracket that I did. So, I mean, but, you know, honestly, as a whole, it was a fun tournament to watch. I mean, watching a 16th seed topple Virginia, even though Virginia was the team I picked, that was great to see. It's one of those moments that you may not ever see again if you're a college basketball fan. And then watching Nevada, especially a Nevada team with a local guy, Elijah Cooks, make that Sweet 16 run, and then Loyola Chicago as well. So, I mean, I was glued. I was entertained. And you know what? I found myself entertained by the style of play of Villanova. I could tell that it's not really 5 guys on the floor. It's 13 deep. And Jay Wright, to me, he found ways to utilize not only his players, but he actually kept some of his best scorers on the bench and brought them out when the time was right. And that's what he did. That's what he clearly did with Donte.
Yeah, a couple things from my perspective. My sister, who doesn't watch a lot of regular season college basketball, she, of course, had Villanova winning it in her bracket, so congrats to that. I had
That's always the way, though.
I had Arizona, which obviously did not have a good tournament, losing to Buffalo. So that does seem how it kind of turns out. If you watch a lot of college basketball, you think you're an expert, your bracket is probably not going to look good. And with Michigan beating Loyola in the Final Four game and then just laying an egg in the title game was just a huge disappointment. Why don't you lay down for Loyola and let us have Loyola playing the championship game and give us maybe a good championship game, or at least a compelling story with having that, Cinderella 11 seed playing
Sister
the title.
G.
Yeah.
Sister G.
So don't go out and beat the team that everyone's kind of rooting for, and then just get dominated in the title game.
I wonder what Grandma Rose, Jalen Rose's grandmother, had to say about what happened on Monday.
She was probably pretty boisterous after the Loyola win, but after that, just domination from Villanova. I don't think there's a whole lot to be said.
Out of Michigan's last 4 halves in that tournament, they played well for one. The second half of the second half of the team I think we all wanted to make the final, but out of it was kind of too bad for me. I mean, they'd had such a fine tournament, and their last 80 minutes, they played well for about, 22, 23? They had a 14-8 lead against Villanova, and then it all went south in a hurry. I mean, I didn't get to see all that game, but I heard that Villanova had a double digits lead for 36 of the 40 minutes.
Wow.
And then a bench player, of all people, I mean, lighting up Michigan. But, again, it goes to show you how Jay Wright manages his players.
Jay Wright just has it going on, I think, in every way. Snazzy dresser. I think as good a coach as anybody. Obviously relates well to his players. I really enjoyed this tournament, but after all the drama, I think Villanova just showed that it was clearly the best team there. Villanova plays long. They can score in a variety of ways. They've shown that they can make the adjustments they need to on defense. They just had everything.
And how about the city of Philadelphia? Eagles win a Super Bowl. Villanova
after
wins
all those years of heartbreak, it was nice to see.
Villanova wins a national title. The Sixers are in the playoffs, and they have a pretty high seed. I mean, you almost wonder what's going to happen with the Phillies now that baseball season started.
I don't know about that one. But
right, yeah, I don't know about that one.
But
Yankees fans.
The last couple things I got to say on that, I think Villanova and Jay Wright is good for college basketball. They're kind of a blue blood basically, but kind of a smaller school and program. That's good that it's not always, one of those dominant teams like Duke and North Carolina always fighting it out. So we do have a dominant program emerge like Villanova winning 2 out of 3 titles. So that's good. And then I thought it was interesting with DiVincenzo having a big breakout game like that, and then people start digging into his past and his background, going through his tweets from like 8 years ago and seeing that there's some kind of inappropriate things there. And it's kind of interesting that always seems to happen now, that you would expect some of these programs to kind of go through that stuff beforehand, clear all that out, make sure there's no kind of, nothing lurking beneath the surface there. We saw that a lot of people were kind of, making a big deal out of some of his prior tweets and social media posts.
Sounds like Michigan fans.
He's up on the social media.
Yeah, sounds like Michigan fans.
It's the best way to stay out of trouble. If you feel like venting, do it to a trusted friend or a relative or your parents.
And I'm sure that was before time Jay Wright even took Twitter seriously.
Yeah.
Or even Villanova in
but
general.
If you're playing the national title game, maybe take a minute before then to clear out your 10-year-old tweets.
Take a deep breath
and not have that stuff come back to kind of bite you. But yeah, it was fun seeing that Final Four, and maybe next year we'll have some deep runs from some Cinderella teams. But that's all we got for this week on the show. For our coverage, we got a lot of tournament coverage. Righetti's Baseball Classic wraps up later this week. Napomo's tournament wraps up Thursday. Then we got that Best of the West tournament. Arcadia Invite is this weekend as well. Thank you guys for tuning in to 805 Sports Talk.